Alrighty. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my reread of Percy Jackson and the Sea of Monsters. Let's go. Okay, I am hyped because I absolutely loved episode 3. The undertones, the subtext, the conversations that we had. Luke's rage at Annabeth, like you hardly knew her. You were on the run for 2 years. You knew her for 2 months. Oh, the acting was amazing. The stories that we got, and being someone who's a book reader and knowing where this is all going, both the past and the present and the future, it is a really cool position to be in, especially with a show this good. Like, the show is not disappointing, and I hope it doesn't. Hope it continues to keep growing and going as it is going, because oh my god, I am hyped. So what I am going to do now is do a reread. We are covering 2 chapters. We Board the Princess Andromeda is chapter number 8. The 9th chapter is I Have the Worst Family Reunion Ever. And then the 10th chapter is We Hitch a Ride with Dead Confederates. So I'm only planning on reading 2 chapters and not the 10th and 11th chapter. Mostly because I don't know what the next episode is going to cover. I remember from the 10th chapter that we have the monster donut. I don't know if that is going to be covered in the next episode. Clarice blows up everything. So just to be safe, I'm only going to do 2 chapters today and share my thoughts on the whole story so far. Which aspects of the book I prefer over the show, any comparisons I need to make or want to make, as well as I'm really curious to see if the book actually reveals the prophecy to Percy. Because, like I was saying in the show's review, I don't remember if Percy was told the prophecy. I think he was only ever told the prophecy at the start of the 5th book. Before that, in the 3rd book, he does take on the prophecy for himself, but I don't know if he was actually aware of the prophecy he was taking on. So that is a twist that I think the show has done. I don't think it's there in the books, and I don't really know how to feel about it until we see a few more consequences of the action that Annabeth took. So I'm hyped to see what actually happens in the book and which one I prefer. Let's read We Board the Princess Andromeda. Let's go. That's crazy. I was staring at the waves when Annabeth and Tyson found me. What's going on? Annabeth asked. I heard you calling for help. Me too, Tyson said. Heard you yell, bad things are attacking. I didn't call you guys, I said. I'm fine. But then who? Annabeth noticed the 3 yellow duffel bags, then the flask and the bottle of vitamins I was holding. What? Just listen, I said. We don't have much time. So did Hermes call them? Because last we saw, Percy was just standing there on the beach as Hermes went away with Martha and George. So I do have to say, I wanted to talk about this in the previous book review, but I didn't really get around to it. But Hermes staff has 2 snakes, Martha and George, and they have a wonderful conversation. They want rats from Percy. Awesome. I get why they didn't show this in the show, mostly because they want to keep the script tight and they don't want to take away from the seriousness of the conversation that Hermes and Percy were having. I get that. I do wish to see them in the future, at least as comic relief, if you will. But yeah, it's crazy that Hermes called Annabeth and Tyson by shifting his voice or something along those lines. It's also fun because Percy, Annabeth, and Tyson, when they get started on the quest, they're running away from Tantalus and they are in a hurry. So it is only after a few seconds that Annabeth is like, oh shit, we are going to get expelled from camp. Here, Annabeth is the one who's like, Percy, we have to do the quest. And Percy's like, we'll get expelled, Trust me, I'm an expert at getting expelled. And Annabeth is like, so? If we fail, there won't be any camp to come back to. Like, I love the shift in dynamics because, and I think I prefer both the show and the book version. Because in the show, we get Annabeth, who is literally telling Percy a few minutes before they get started on the quest that all she knows to do is be a demigod. The camp is her life, it's her home. She didn't have a good time back home. Everything was kind of messed up, and all she knows is that, okay, Camp Half Blood is my home. If nothing else, I can always come back to camp. This is my safe space. And then she is dealing with the consequences of having heard the great prophecy pretty much a day ago. So she has had less than 48 hours to actually sit with the prophecy. And remember, like, these are 12-year-old kids. That's a lot to put on a 12-year-old kid. So it's understandable that she's still reeling from that information. And so we get the fear of having been expelled and no longer having a safe space that Thalia essentially sacrificed her life for to get Annabeth to. There are heavier consequences on Annabeth, and the feelings that she's feeling is legit real. I also like the book version mostly because it's Annabeth being smart. So far, we haven't seen Annabeth be like, oh yeah, I hated home. It was weird. It was chaotic. We haven't seen that yet. I don't think Annabeth feels that properly until book number 3, where Percy actually notices that she is not really that happy or as happy as she could be. But it's mostly like struggling to fit in. Yeah, we don't get that yet. And so the book Annabeth is like, so, I mean, we need to have a camp by the time we come back to it. We gotta go. I like both versions. Might like the show version just a tad bit more, I would say. I like this in the book where Annabeth is like, Percy, we are going to Polyphemus's island. Polyphemus is a SIK, CYK. She stamped her foot in frustration. As smart as she was, Annabeth was dyslexic too. We could have been there all night while she tried to spell Cyclops. Like, I love moments like these. Not because Annabeth is frustrated, but moments like these, I find them to be really dope and real to their character. Once again, reminding us that these are kids, and Annabeth at the end of the day is also a demigod and dyslexic at that. Percy being like, Dad, I called. How's it going? Percy, Annabeth whispered, we are in a hurry. I do wish that we got hippocampi in the show. I'm kind of hoping that we get them later on in the season. Like, I get the idea of a lifeboat that Hermes left behind, but I would have really liked the hippocampi because it's just Hermes telling Percy that, hey, your dad approves the quest. But Percy was honestly like, you're also the god of lies and a thief. So I don't really know if you're being honest or not. But Poseidon sending over the hippocampi is a clear sign of his approval for Percy to go on the quest. And so I really do hope that we get fish ponies, like Tyson says, later on in the story. I remembered the myth about Andromeda and how she had been chained to a rock by her own parents as a sacrifice to a sea monster, which is what? Maybe she had gotten too many F's on her report card or something. Anyway, my namesake Perseus had saved her just in time and turned the sea monster to stone using the head of Medusa. Crazy stuff. That Perseus always won. That's why my mom had named me after him, even though he was a son of Zeus and I was a son of Poseidon. The original Perseus was one of the only heroes in the Greek myths who got a happy ending. The others died, betrayed, mauled, mutilated, poisoned, or cursed by the gods. My mom hoped I would inherit Perseus's luck. Judging by how my life was going so far, I wasn't really optimistic. Boy, I don't know what to say. I mean, he does get to live, which is much better than a lot of the heroes that we have seen and read about. What has Hector ever done to me? Ugh. Still traumatized by the 7 words. Oh my gosh. Grover unraveling the bridal train and then weaving it back when he sees the Cyclops coming back and having a conversation with him. That is such a Penelope thing to do. Like, I know it is inspired by Odysseus. And now, having actually learned a bit more about Odysseus' journey, it's kind of crazy to see the similarities. I want to read out this conversation to you. The Cyclops struck one hand into the room and groped around until he found the loom. He pawed at the cloth. It hasn't gotten any longer. Oh, yes, it has, dearest. See, I've added at least 3 centimeters. Too many delays, the monster bellowed. Then he sniffed the air. You smell good, like goats. Oh, Grover forced a weak giggle. Do you like it? It's eau de chèvre. I know I'm pronouncing it wrong. Sucks to be you guys, I guess. I bought it just for you. The Cyclops bared his pointed teeth. Good enough to eat. Oh, you're such a flirt. No more delays. But dear, I'm not done. Tomorrow. No, 10 more days. 5. Oh well, 7 then, if you insist. 7? That is less than 5, right? Certainly. Oh yes. I feel so sad for Grover, but also I'm really glad that he's extremely clever with this. Oh my gosh. Okay, this is cool. Percy wakes up to a voice on the intercom that goes, Good morning, passengers. We'll be at sea all day today. Excellent weather for the poolside mambo party. Don't forget $1 million bingo in the Kraken Lounge at 1 o'clock, and for a special guest, disemboweling practice on the promenade. Just the last few pages. Reading it gave me the vibe of the Lotus Casino. Like, everything was already prepared for Percy, Annabeth, and Grover. And Percy does get like that weird vibe, like he's in a ghost ship or something along those lines. And the fact that they are going to get disemboweled and it's announced, it's kind of crazy. I think I kind of prefer the book version over the show version, where in the show, Percy grabs Allison's bag, and in the bag there is the card with Kronos' logo, and then Annabeth switches on the TV, sees Kronos' logo, and then there is the whole announcement like, hey, you can do whatever you want to do here. There are monsters here, blah blah blah. And I think that is what makes for a good trap also in the show, to be honest, because I know as I'll keep reading this, there is going to be this part where Percy looks at all the passengers and they're kind of like, completely zonked out. They're just moving around kind of like zombies with no awareness at all whatsoever. But then in the show, everyone is actively engaging and there's song and dance, and it's like a proper cruise essentially. And so they don't really realize that something is wrong until they see the Lastrygonians. Here it's like you wake up and you're like, oh, we are in a mess right now. Annabeth looked at me. We have to get out of here. You think I want to be in the girls' restroom? I mean, the ship, Percy. We have to get off the ship. The humor, okay? I love this humor so much. Annabeth volunteered to go alone since she had the cap of invisibility, but I convinced her it was too dangerous. Either we all went together or nobody went. Nobody, Tyson voted. Please, this baby boy. He is the only one who's actually going to survive a haunted house if we ever come around to it. Annabeth hearing Chris Rodriguez's voice, Percy kind of remembering Chris from camp last summer, and then him going, what's another demigod doing here? Ooh, I like that. I like that. Because they don't yet know that Luke has been gathering half bloods, and that the more half bloods that join the cause, the stronger Kronos gets. Ooh. Annabeth freaking out about Tyson being able to speak in another voice and knowing why. Ooh, the trauma hurts. Especially when I was first reading the book, it was like, just get along with him. Like, why do you hate him so much? It couldn't be that bad, whatever you went through. And then I realized, it is that bad. In fact, it is worse than I imagined. I like this moment. Despite the javelins pointed at me, it wasn't the bear twins who scared me. I'd imagined meeting Luke again many times since he had tried to kill me last summer. I'd pictured myself boldly standing up to him, challenging him to a duel. But now that we were face to face, I could barely stop my hands from shaking. And it goes to show he's just a kid. Oh, and everything that has happened so far, in one way or another, it has led to trauma and it starts to show up in scenarios like these. So, okay, the story is messed up. You don't know Agrius and Orius' story? Luke asked. Their mother, well, it's sad really. Aphrodite ordered the young woman to fall in love. She refused and ran to Artemis for help. Artemis let her become one of her maiden huntresses, but Aphrodite got her revenge. She bewitched the young woman into falling in love with the bear. When Artemis found out, she abandoned the girl in disgust. Typical of the gods, wouldn't you say? They fight with one another, and the poor humans get caught in the middle. The girl's twin sons here, Agrius and Orius, have no love for Olympus. Here's the thing. When I first started reading the book, I was like, okay, this might just be an isolated incident, or there might be a few incidences like these, but it might not be the reality. But the more I read about Greek mythology, the more I realized that it is filled to the brim and it overflows stories and tragedies like these. If I was a young woman, I would be losing my mind. I would be fighting with Olympus, quite literally. I get Luke a lot. When I was first reading the book, I was like, I get it, but also at the same time, is this enough to actually wage war in a way that is going to bring down Olympus and cause mass casualties and kind of carve the path for a worse reality? But then, knowing what I know now, then also seeing show Luke, where he's having conversations about monsters being just children of the gods and they deserve love and attention and appreciation as well. It's chaotic because I get Luke. Honestly, if I was in Luke's shoes, I would have joined Kronos' side, but I would have been smarter about it. But that's the pitfall, right? Like, we all think that, yeah, we can beat the gods, or we can beat Kronos, or we can create a reality how we want to create in a world ruled by divine beings. But a lot of times we are just being manipulated. So it's like a lose-lose scenario in a lot of cases. That's one of the reasons why I like the Percy Jackson books so much. Is with a lot of the other stories I've read, there are opportunities and chances where you're like, if it was me, I would go back, or if there was a time travel conversation, I would go back and do this instead. But a lot of times when I think about the Percy Jackson books, I realize that this had to happen, because if it did not happen, nothing would have changed. And yes, the casualties of war, they were huge. And maybe if there was a time travel AU, maybe we could lessen the casualties of war. But then the journey that Luke takes had to be taken, because the gods wouldn't have listened otherwise. It's a very well written story, I would say, but also hurts. Well, Percy, we'll let you survive another year. I hope you appreciated it. How's your mom? How's school? I mean, if you were going to do this, you could have waited till school ended. You know what I mean? Like, so he didn't get expelled. Don't act like you were helping him out. You poisoned Talia's tree. Luke sighed. Right to the point, eh? Okay, sure. I poisoned the tree. So what? How could you? Annabeth sounded so angry, I thought she would explode. Talia saved your life. Our lives. How could you dishonor her? I didn't dishonor her, Luke snapped. The gods dishonored her, Annabeth. If Talia were alive, she would be on my side. Liar. I like this, but I prefer the show confrontation just a bit more. We could see the rage Luke had, where he was like, "You don't know anything about Talia." Ooh, Luke going, "We can start the world anew. We could use your intelligence, Annabeth, because you have none of your own." Traveling with the Cyclops, Luke chided. Talk about dishonoring Talia's memory. I'm surprised at you, Annabeth. You of all people. Luke is a bitch. Boy, you could have tried better to get her on your side. Come on. There were so many ways he could have gotten Annabeth to his side, both in the show and the book. And I'm kind of sad that he didn't try. Manipulate her. What's one more war crime, eh? Luke just chuckled. The gods are so using you, Percy. Do you have any idea what's in store for you if you reach your 16th birthday? Has Chiron even told you the prophecy? I wanted to get in Luke's face and tell him off, but as usual, he knew just how to throw me off balance. 16th birthday? I mean, I knew Chiron had received a prophecy from the oracle many years ago. I knew part of it was about me. But if I reached my 16th birthday, I didn't like the sound of that. I know what I need to know. I manage, like who my enemies are. Then you are a fool. Luke, I cut in. Listen to me. Your father sent us. His face turned the color of pepperoni. Don't even mention him. He told us to take this boat. I thought it was just for a ride, but he sent us here to find you. He told me he wouldn't give up on you no matter how angry you are. Angry? Luke roared. Give up on me? He abandoned me, Percy. I want Olympus destroyed. Every throne crushed to rubble. You tell Hermes it's going to happen too. Each time a half blood joins us, the Olympians grow weaker and we grow stronger. He grows stronger. Luke pointed to the gold sarcophagus. Okay, here's the thing. Two things actually. I kind of prefer both the show and the book version of Percy telling Luke about Hermes and Hermes being the one who sent them after Luke. Because in the show, Percy goes, he sent us, he thinks you can still be saved. I don't think so. And Percy is very clear on his stance on this whole conversation. He's like, you can't be saved. You're doing something wrong. You're still getting the attention of your parent. Even though you're trying to destroy the very world he is a part of, you're still getting his attention. And he cares for you and he loves you. That's one side of the story. I feel like because of the way the show is set up or has been set up so far, with Percy having a very clear stance on how he feels about Luke, when we do get around to learning a bit more about May Castellan's journey in the show, it is going to be a bigger payoff, I feel, mostly because there are so many similarities between Percy and Luke. And that's how they're kind of setting it up. Sally has a dream where she sees a golden drachma with one side having Poseidon's mark and the other side having Kronos' mark. It's literally like we are both different sides of the same coin. There is the fact that Sally can see through the mist. There is the fact that she also has prophetic dreams, kind of similar to May. So I feel like when we do get around to May Castellan's story, it's going to hit Percy harder because he can very quickly and easily imagine his mom in May's place. And if he sits down and actually thinks about it, he's going to realize that, oh shit, I would have done the exact same thing. And so I see where the show is going. I see the setup that they are setting up. and I really like it and vibe with it, especially for new viewers who haven't read the books so far. It is going to be such a huge payoff for them. I absolutely love it. In the book, Luke is letting Percy know right away, and Percy is trying to explain to Luke that hey, maybe things can change, maybe we can make it something different. But then Luke is like, oh, he won't give up on me no matter how angry I am. Percy, he abandoned me. So Luke is letting Percy know right off the bat that he is not happy with Hermes, and he is not going to be happy with Hermes because Hermes had many opportunities to course correct, but he did not. And so I kind of prefer both versions if I'm being extremely honest. Because of the foresight, I love how the show is setting it up, but I also love Luke being. It's okay, it's this, right? Percy is strong in his stance of hating Luke in the show, and Luke is just as strong in his stance of hating Hermes in the book. That's what it is. So I kind of prefer both. Ooh, I like it. Luke goes, with every recruit who pledges our cause, another small piece appears. That's disgusting, Annabeth said. Luke sneered at her. Your mother was born from Zeus's split skull, Annabeth. I wouldn't talk. It is hilarious and funny. I didn't remember it being this hilarious and funny. Also, this is a thought process that I have, okay, which is extremely random and very, very dark, but stay with me. If every recruit who joins Kronos' side makes him stronger and makes the Olympians weaker, can the gods not have a bunch of babies and then send them to Camp Half Blood? They get stronger then. I know I was literally talking about Children of War and all of that jazz, but if it works, it works. Ayo, in the grand scheme of things, I am such a bad person. But also, it would work, right? Tyson turned and smacked Dordius 10 meters backwards into the swimming pool, right into the middle of the zombie tourist family. Ah, the kids yelled in unison. We are not having a blast in the pool. Why is this so hilarious? Awesome. That is the two chapters. Percy, Annabeth, and Tyson are in the lifeboat. Percy cuts the ropes, the lifeboat falls down. They hit the deck running. They get into the ocean and off they go. I like these chapters. I like that there were a lot of similarities, yet so many differences between the book and the show. And I like both the show version and the book version. I would say, completely honestly, right? Like, there was a point in the show where I was like, ah, shit, I would actually join Luke's version, where he was like, monsters are nothing but the children of God. Why should they be treated separately or weirdly just because their other parent isn't a mortal human being? And we should treat them with love. And the show had a bit more of the demigods and monsters working together concept. And I was like, ah, especially seeing Tyson with the Lastrygonians and him actually having a good time with them. But then he was like, I did the bomb thing because I had to save you guys. I really felt like I could have joined Luke's side. I would have been smart about it, but I would also be open to actually joining Luke's side at that point in time, especially with the foresight that we have, right? Like, it's a win-lose scenario essentially. So I would have joined Luke's side, I feel, at least in that moment. I also like Tyson building a bomb in the show because it kind of shows how smart he is with his hands and how clever he is within the group and his importance in the group. Here, he's almost like a muscle essentially. He's smacking hellhounds and he's smacking away, or he is. I get it, but I kind of just a tad bit more prefer the Tyson of the show. But Percy essentially tells us that the Tyson that we have here in the book is like mentally, he's 7 to 8 years old according to Cyclops' age. So it makes sense why he's more of a muscle as opposed to a smart, let me build a bomb. In the show, the Tyson that we get, he is mentally at the same age as Percy is. So I kind of get it why Show Tyson is smarter, whereas Book Tyson is more of a muscle at this point in time in this particular book. Overall, I prefer both versions. I prefer the show. I am loving the show. There are elements or there are moments where I prefer the show a tad bit more over the book. But I also love the book because the book gives us the lore. And yeah, it's perfect. Both of these things are perfect. Very amazing writing. I'm hyped to watch tomorrow. Actually, I'll be watching. I'm recording this on Tuesday, and I'm hyped to watch Clarice Blows Everything Up tomorrow and then share the review of that with you all. Until then, take care of yourselves. Let me know what you thought about the book as you are watching this video. Do you remember any moments that you really liked? Put them in the comments. Let's chat. I love talking about these things with people. There are not a lot of people around me who are actively reading Percy Jackson or have read Percy Jackson back when I was reading Percy Jackson. So it's harder to find people to have conversation with. The whole reason why I'm doing the stuff is that I'm doing it mostly for the free stuff I'll eventually get when I become popular enough and famous enough. But outside of that, I am also doing it because I'm smart and I can figure out plot points really quickly. But outside of all of that, it is also because I love talking about all of these things with people. But there are oftentimes not enough people or anyone that I really vibe with that I can have a conversation with. So chat in the comments. Let's build this community. I would love to talk to you a bit more about Percy Jackson, about Greek mythology, about how Andromeda's parents were kind of jerks and I kind of hate them for it. And also how Aphrodite and Artemis were weird as hell with the young woman. Honestly, even if a god would come down and be like, you gotta marry someone, I'd be like, nah, try me, bitch. I ain't gonna do that. I literally do the opposite of what you're asking me to do. So, if I was the young woman and Aphrodite asked me to marry someone or fall in love with someone, I'd be like, sucks to be disappointed because that's what you are going to be. Ha ha ha. So yeah, it's a weird thing, and once again, kind of get Luke's side of the story and why he's doing what he's doing. But let me know down in the comments what you thought of these two particular chapters. If you are rereading with me, let's go. Let me know in the comments what other parts of the chapters you enjoyed, and like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one where Clarice blows everything up. Ooh, let's go.